It's podcast day earlier. It's all different today. The vibe. It's daylight outside.
Yeah.
We're not doing this in the darkness anymore. We've come into the light. Do you feel different this morning?
It's an afternoon.
It is early morning. Well, I got up
It's
early
1:15.
I feel like we're David Goggins in this.
What did you do before the record?
I ate breakfast and then I had to run here.
You had to run here.
Well, I thought I'd be late.
What time did you wake up?
I woke up at 10:30.
10:30. Is that what time did you go to bed?
2:30.
What were you doing?
I was reading a book.
You were reading a book.
I was reading A Prayer for Owen Meany.
What's that?
It's a book by John Irving. It's about...
John Irving,
I
don't
do
you?
like John Irving, yeah. But I've not read this before, and it's about a weird little boy called Owen Meany who kills his best friend's mum by accident with a baseball. Like, he hits a baseball really, really hard and just murks her in front of everyone in the school.
Right.
But he's like this sort of becoming this divine kind of messiah figure because he's so bizarre and weird and everyone loves him. But this is just the beginning.
Right.
Who knows where
Do you like it so far?
I do like it.
What do you like about John Irving?
It's really weird. He writes he builds like huge worlds. So they almost read like biographies almost. But they don't read like biographies, but he'll create like a full, like every character's got backstory.
Yeah.
And they're really big, long stories. But it does make you very connected to all the characters. And the characters are all very... they're all just quite kooky and weird, but don't feel like gratuitously so. Also, a lot of the stuff's like written in the 70s and 80s, and there's loads of stuff.
And you could say
like,
whatever you wanted back then.
Yeah, but he's very progressive. It's really interesting watching it now.
Right.
Reading it now and looking back on it and being like, actually, this dude was like well ahead of his time. But I think he's got a transgender daughter or son or something.
What, in real life?
Yeah, I think so. But pre all the,
Yeah.
fashion. I don't know.
He said that on the podcast. He's like, yeah, I've got a transgender daughter or son or something. I can't figure it out, but they're cool.
Yeah. I like him. He's fun.
Who was the first... I was asking this someone the other day, and I don't think they liked the question very much. To be fair, we were quite drunk in a pub, and it was probably not... I do that quite often. I'll ask quite like intense questions when it's like a fun vibe. Because I think of a question, I go, that's a good question. And then everyone else is like, oh, we were just like...
What were you like, do you want to kiss?
No, it wasn't the question.
It's not the vibe.
It was, what like artist did you first like really connect to?
Oh, I know
you
the
were
answer
growing
to
up?
this.
An artist in the broadest sense of the word. In fact, I'm almost hoping you don't say a painter because painters are boring and whatever. I mean, like writers or whatever.
What's his face from The Prodigy? Keith.
The main guy from The Prodigy.
The Firestarter. That blew my mind. I was obsessed with him. I tried to shave my head like him.
Why were you so obsessed with him?
I don't know, because he was like,
You thought that was cool.
I'm a fire starter. I was like, whoa, that's a naughty boy.
How old were you?
I don't know, like 4, 5.
4?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Young.
Okay. All right.
Or I don't know, maybe older.
Yeah.
Young. It feels
Okay,
like
well
a very formative early memory.
I was more thinking about those teenage years when you discover things and it's like blowing your mind.
Oh,
But if we're going that far back, I probably would have to say Sooty and Sweep.
Yeah, Pingu was another big feature.
Pingu.
And Prodigy.
I used to love Barney the dinosaur,
I didn't like Barney the dinosaur.
which I think is like in retrospect quite like a lame thing to have liked. Like Pingu and Sooty, those are both pretty like cool.
That's Sooty. Why is he so dirty?
Did you know I once went to see Bodger and Badger live?
What?
And you know Bodger and Badger?
I know Bodger and Badger.
was
Mashed potato.
Bodger was a bloke, Badger was a badger, and Badger would throw mashed potato at Bodger, and Bodger would be fucking... He'd be livid. He'd hate it.
You should be.
Yeah.
I'd be annoyed if you threw mashed potatoes at me.
And we went to see them live, and we went and sat down with me and my parents in the audience, and I said, is Badger going to throw mashed potato at me? And my mum was like, no, I'm sure he won't. And I was like, he throws mashed potato at everyone. How do you know he's not going to throw mashed potato at the audience? My mum was like, I'm sure he's not going to throw mashed potato at the audience. And I was like, are you sure? And she was like, yeah. And then the lights went down and I said, I need to leave. And we left. My mum was like, are you sure we can like go and stand at the back? And then I was like, no, I'm going home.
I thought that
This
was
is too
going to be
intense.
like the villain's origin story, and you're like, and I've never eaten mashed potatoes. You didn't even make it to the show. You left.
No, I left. I was terrified.
Like a coward.
I was a really, really like shy, weak child, and yeah,
But
really
that's-
frightened by a lot of stuff. I don't know why.
I mean, that's how Bruce Wayne became Batman, wasn't it?
But the bats flying around him.
Well,
yeah.
no. Before that, he's like, I can't be at the opera. There's bats. Oh, because he's scared of the bats.
I thought you fell down a well and there's bats in the well, and that's
Yeah.
why he's scared of bats.
Yeah, but that was he got PTSD from the bats, and then he went to the show with his parents, and then they leave, and his parents get shot because he makes them leave.
Yeah,
early.
but But there weren't any. Were there bats at the show?
No. He was already pre-traumatized by the bats.
Yeah, but you just said there were bats at the opera.
Yeah, bats at the opera. Yeah, it was like it was like cats, but it's bats.
Okay, none of what you've said has made any sense at all.
What are you talking about? It's Batman. You should know this.
I know that Batman
Falls down a well.
Gets scared by bats, then he goes to the opera and leaves
with his parents.
Yeah, and his parents get shot.
Yes.
But then you were like, that's like Batman being scared of the bats at the opera.
Yeah,
No,
so you're like mashed potato man. Because you're like, I'm so scared of the mashed potato. We've got to leave the theater.
Well,
but your parents didn't get shot afterwards.
Yeah, and also the bats had nothing to do with him seeing it at the show. I think
No, the bats had
you're
everything to
trying
do
to
with-
make a joke and it's failed entirely.
I will fucking shove mashed potato down your throat.
I would like-
I was trying to actually be. I wasn't trying to be funny. I was trying to be supportive by comparing you to Batman.
Thank you. I
Being
appreciate
like
that.
he was a bit of a pussy, but then he turned into a pretty like opposite of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was trying to be nice.
Thank you, Luke. I appreciate you being
No.
nice. No.
No.
I'm sorry.
No. Fuck you.
I just misunderstood you, Luke, because
No,
you were
you're
talking
being-
rubbish.
I'm gonna kill you.
Can we just say, can people write in if they think what Luke was saying made sense? And if they think it didn't make sense?
They're gonna say yes.
Okay, well then good.
Yeah.
So you should be encouraging this to happen.
All right, fine. I will. Would you say sorry if
Obviously.
yeah? All right.
I think you need to do a big deep breath, Luke.
You need to do a deep breath.
I feel like the tension currently is coming from you.
What? Because I said I'd kill you.
I'm more focused on the tone of voice. If you listen to me, I sound a bit like a sort of a meditation teacher or a yoga master, and you sound like
You sound like a psychopath devoid of his emotions, plotting vengeful, triggering words to put me in a tiz.
this can be the start of a sort of multi-podcast narrative of our building resentment of one another, leading into a violent face-off when we get to episode 500 or something
That's
like
what
that.
we're going for. 500. Stay tuned till then.
We're reviewing today the film Companion. We'll get to that in a bit. You had a nice week, Luke?
Yeah, I had a nice week.
What did you do?
I did some movies. I watched some movies.
What movies have you watched this week, Luke?
I watched The Hateful Eight by Quentin Tarantino. And,
Lovely.
When Harry Met Sally.
Why were you dipping into these old... I was going to say, I don't know if Hateful Eight is old enough to be nostalgic for you, but Hateful Eight is one of the only
I suppose
Quentin
there's no-
Tarantino movies I've not seen.
Yeah.
How did it hold up? This is your second time seeing it, right?
This is my second time seeing it. I didn't like it the first time I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't love it the second time I watched it either. It's so long.
Yeah.
There's so much talking. Which is kind of weird. It's basically Reservoir Dogs, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's bad.
It's set
We
in
need
a
to
sort
find
of
out
single
who.
location.
Single
right?
location, yeah. A bunch of badass gunslingers,
Yeah.
all with a backstory of some sort, trying to work out who's like the traitor, I guess, or who's working with I think they're the Brady gang. I can't remember what they're called. And they got to work out who it is, and it's all tense and all that like Quentin Tarantino dialogue that's like, ooh, do we need to be talking about this? But why not? We can do anything. It's a movie. But it's also, Reservoir Dogs is an hour and a half. This is 3.5 hours.
Do you think it's an example of like when successful movie directors become too much themselves?
Yeah.
Like how like Wes Anderson in the French Dispatch is like too much Wes Anderson, and Christopher Nolan when he made Tenet, it's just too Christopher Nolan.
You need a bit of reining it. Or like the Star Wars guy,
George Lucas.
That's the one.
yeah.
Went totally too George on everything.
Is Hateful Eight the sort of unfortunate result of Quentin Tarantino being too Quentin Tarantino?
Yeah, I think that'd be fair. It's not a bad movie though. Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't say it's as egregious as like George Lucas. I think like actually makes bad movies. Yeah. Whereas this, I'd be like, it's not a bad movie. If I had seen this outside of every other Quentin Tarantino movie, I'd be like, this is a memorable movie in quite a few aspects. But it's not like, it feels a little bit like almost like someone doing an impression of Quentin Tarantino. Yeah, like all the dialogue that is like sort of quirky and like real people talking feels like long for no reason. There's like elements of like, you know, that he brings back tropes from like old movies that they're sort of, every time they're put in there, they feel a little bit like, yeah, but why? Whereas like in his other movies, they all feel fun and pretty good. Like things like he'll do like long shots of them like just putting stakes in the ground and it goes on for like 2.5 minutes and you're like, why are we watching this? And it's probably from some old Western movie he's seen and it's like,
because he's like one of the biggest movie nerds in the world. He puts in references in his movies that are for the 8 or 9 other people in the world who know movies as well as he does. And for everyone else it's a bit annoying,
but it feels a bit weird because it's like even the things like, you know, like he uses, you know, he's always been criticized for like using the N-word in his films. It's like in this it's like all the time and it just feels like, why? Like I wouldn't even think people would talk like this in cowboy times. So it does suddenly feel a bit like, oh, this is a bit gratuitous now, whereas like, you know, Django Unchained doesn't feel like that because it's like the subject matter or whatever. Whereas this is like, I don't know. The only thing that there's not excessive there's not loads of feet in the movie, which is
but probably because it's mostly men.
I
feel like he's not super into dudes' feet. No,
probably not. But there's a lady in it the whole way through. She could have got her feet up.
Who's the lady?
I can't remember her name, but she's so good in it.
Wow, biting criticism there from Luke there.
In the movie.
I can't remember her name, but I loved the woman.
I did love the
Big
woman.
Big fan of the woman.
I haven't seen her in anything else. She has been in other stuff, but she is sick in that movie. So good, the actress disappears.
Nice. It would be so... We can only imagine how good this podcast would have been if you'd looked up her name beforehand.
Yeah, well, I didn't. I could have looked it up in the hour we had before.
I think I probably... You say it's 3.5 hours long?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just fuck off. Basically, just everything is not like...
With no intermission. The Brutalist had the decency
to
put
an
intermission. This has no intermission.
Yeah, I just don't think...
But the end scene is crazy. Like, it does build up to this huge crescendo of like a final... like big act, and it is like, whoa, what the fuck? But it takes so long to get there.
At least like Kill Bill, he split into 2 movies. He had the decency to do that.
But also Kill Bill's like loads of stuff happens. Like there are different locations, different, like there's action scenes between. This is like so much chat. Occasionally someone gets shot, back to chat. But Reservoir Dogs, which is essentially that, is like so much pacier. And I love Reservoir Dogs. But I also really wanted to like Hateful Eight. It's not that I don't like it, but I was like, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to sit down and watch the whole thing. And then I had to watch it in 3 parts.
So it did in fact have 2 intermissions.
Yes, but by my own. That was Luke's cut.
They should release that. The Chilton cut.
Well, what is good is like he's put it in chapters. So it's like chapter 1, the Arrival, chapter 2, Black Hell or something. I can't remember what they're called. And I just stopped watching it every time it got to a chapter break.
Is Black Hell the name of a?
I think that it's
chapter?
White Man's World, Black Man's Hell, or something like that.
Right,
Is the name of
okay.
the chapter. It's not just me making up chapters.
I was just thinking a slightly unusual chapter name.
Yeah.
If it
Well, one
was
of the
from your own
characters is
noggin.
black,
Okay.
but it's Wild Westy time, so they're pretty racist back then. And there's a lot of chat about the Confederacy and the war to free the
Yeah.
slaves and all that, which
Yeah.
is, I think, is good to put in there. Why not? But there's a lot in there. There's just too much in there. There's too
much in the
Too
film.
much film.
Okay. I'll yeah, sounds like too much. I mean, all films at the 3 and I can't think of any movie over 3 hours long that justifies its runtime. Even the Lord of the Rings films, which I quite liked when I watched them. I remember The Return of the King ending about 10 times.
Oh yeah, Return of the
And I'm just like, fucking
How
come
many
on.
times can this king come back?
Just give out a leaflet at the end and be like, and Frodo went here and this happened
Yeah.
and da 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 da. You don't have to watch everyone fucking.
I also didn't realize that Aragorn was the king.
Oh, is that what it is? That what in the Return of the King is the Return of Aragorn?
Yeah, he's the
I
king.
didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
What else did you watch? You watched when Harry
Much
met Eley.
easier watch.
Yeah.
Really short, hour and a half. Bing bang bosh.
How does that stand the test of time with regards to its politics, sexual politics?
Sexual politics?
I saw it for the first time a few years ago and remember being a bit sort of surprised by it. I expected something a bit kind of cheesier, maybe.
Oh no,
And
Harry Met Sally's pretty good. Yeah.
He is. It's interesting. He's quite unlikable. The guy.
He's kind of a prick.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a cynical know-it-all, but annoyingly so.
Why do you think it is like the rom-com that has maybe stood the test of time more than anything else? Do you think it deserves?
Wasn't it the first one?
The first rom-com?
Well, not the first ever rom-com, but wasn't it like the first sort of like formulaic? I don't know. Wasn't everyone trying to copy it?
Probably.
So wasn't it? I don't know. Maybe it did something first.
Yeah, and I'm asking you, what did it do?
I don't know.
What's good about it? Okay, so why are we talking about it?
No, it is
did you
good.
think
It
of
is good. I thought it was very good. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think just Meg Ryan and what's his face are pretty good, aren't they? Script's good.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I feel like they chat about. I don't know. It's quite good. They chat about like relationships in quite a nuanced way, I would say. Whereas like a lot of, if you compare it to The Notebook, which I fucking hate The Notebook.
Yeah.
Terrible movie. Or like Message. It's like such a like they make love such a idealized, all-consuming sort of insane desire that'll make you do anything, and you should do anything for your partner. Whereas Harry Met Sally is much more like, we don't even really like each other, but now we do, and we have to be together, and it's all messy and a bit like grounded, maybe.
Right.
Even though it is still heightened because it's like a movie.
Yeah.
Whereas The Notebook, I'm just like, she essentially is just like gonna get married to some seemingly decent man, and then is like, no, there's this stable boy I knew from my past, and we're gonna go and row on a lake of swans and have hot sex in the rain, and
Yeah.
and you're just like, it's dumb. That doesn't happen.
Okay. So yeah, it's
And
not.
then everyone's like, why don't I have that kind of love in my life? Maybe I should break up with my real partner to be more like The Notebook. Whereas Harry Met Sally's like, yeah, no, look, it's kind of long and complicated and annoying. So
breaking the trend of the sort of over sentimental Hollywood romance.
Yeah.
With something that is more representative of
people's real
how
lives.
Weird and messy and fucked up actual relationships are.
Yeah, and it's got those fun little vignettes with the real couples who are like talking about how they met and stuff.
Oh, right.
And it's all a bit like, oh, we met here and it gives you a range of different things, and it's fun, you know? You're just like, oh, this feels a bit more, this will connect with people a bit more, this is a bit more realistic.
Yeah.
Yes. Although it's really funny watching, what's his face, the super famous guy, try and...
See if Luke can remember an actor's name.
Well, I know
today.
Meg Ryan.
Yeah.
And I know Carrie Fisher, who are both in this movie. I can't remember the main guy's name.
I've also forgotten it, but it's not one of the movies I'm reviewing this week.
Yeah. Look, I didn't expect to be talking about these. But it is funny watching him try and pass as an 18-year-old in the opening 15 minutes of the film when he is actually 40.
Billy Crystal.
Billy Crystal, that's the one. He's great in it. But yeah, you can literally see his like old man wrinkles and stuff, and he's like carrying a baseball bat. Like, yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna go serious with Jenny or whatever. And you're like, you're an old man. You're old enough to be Meg Ryan's dad.
Oh my god. Yeah, I find it so weird when movies do that, and I guess it can work now sometimes with de-aging, but when you've got like an older actor and they've just slathered them with makeup and they've been like, stand maybe really far away from the camera.
Wear this hoodie with a Simpsons character
all
on it.
anyone is thinking is how dumb it looks.
Like, why does that 18-year-old's hairline so fucked up?
It's either that or just get another actor to play them who looks nothing like them. You're like, what the fuck has happened in these intervening years? They had like serious facial surgery.
I recommend. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Good.
What's your favourite rom-com?
That one.
That one.
Probably.
Did you watch it because you were feeling sort of horny, lonely, sad, romantic, in love?
Yeah.
Because you're quite a manly man.
Really?
Well, sort of compared to me.
Oh.
I don't know if in the sort of grand
man
scheme.
who was like, Bodger and Badger, I hope it's not too extreme.
Yeah, that's true. I realize it's not. That's why I mentioned compared to me.
In my head, you went to Bodger and Badger in a full tuxedo.
No, I think I was more likely wearing denim dungarees.
Really?
So there's a picture of me in them as a little blonde, bright blonde hair.
What?
Yeah.
You were blonde?
I was blonde.
No, but you're not blonde.
No.
What?
Sometimes kids are born blonde and their hair goes brown as they get older.
What? See, this is like, if we had you in a movie and we had a blonde actor playing you before, everyone would be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, I think I was literally like 3 when I was blonde. I was probably older when I went to Bodger and Badger. I was probably 15.
Do you miss being blonde?
I don't remember being blonde. I just remember pictures of me.
Mm.
I've seen pictures of me blonde. I did once Photoshop my hair blonde to see what I'd look like. And I showed it to my girlfriend at the time and said, should I dye my hair blonde? And she said, no, and if you do, I will break up with you. So I didn't. But I did make me want to do it more.
Yeah, you should have done it as a challenge.
Yeah.
Test that.
I wonder if she would have done as well.
Maybe you would have looked cool. You could have looked like Eminem. Or, sorry, that you like M&Ms.
I feel like it's a sign that a relationship was not sort of long for this world, that I was like a hair cut away from being dumped.
Would you ever, if Laura came back and she had changed her hair to Keith from the Prodigy's hairstyle and was like, I love it. This is me now.
So Laura, who is my girlfriend,
so sick.
will
So sick.
Is quite spontaneous and will quite often say like, "Oh, why don't I do this?" or like she'll have a lot of ideas for things, and as a sort of kind of frightened man, I'm often frightened by these ideas. But what I have learned is just to sort of go along with the ideas and hope they die down.
I love your primary character attribute being frightened.
Yeah. And so what will happen is, I'm fairly sure in our relationship, she said something like, what if I cut all my hair off?
Yeah.
And
you were like, oh.
whatever, or get the Prodigy's hairstyle.
Yes.
And being fearful and not knowing what that would be like, my brain has gone, do not do that. I would not like that. Please. But I know if I do say that, then she'll be more likely to go, what are you talking about? Fuck you, I'm doing it. So what I have to do is I go, oh, that's a lovely idea. And then hope that her very severe ADHD will remove her memory of ever saying it the following day.
You have to redirect her to other things.
And Laura, if you're listening to this and are annoyed at any of what I've just said,
I've left a fidget spinner for you in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Overplay with that.
Yeah.
You just get out the laser pen.
I've installed a mobile over our bed. Just go and have a look at that, and then we can talk about it afterwards.
What's funny is you also have severe ADHD.
Yes, I do. I do have ADHD.
So you two must be chaos.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. We are not a functioning couple. I've watched something this week. I've watched about half of season 1 of Bad Sisters, which is a show on Apple TV, which came out a year or two ago. Season 2 has just come out. And it is a kind of comedy drama based on a Belgian TV show. And it's starring and developed by Sharon Horgan, and also co-written by a couple of American dudes who I've never heard of. And the premise of the show is there are some sisters, some bad sisters.
What?
That's the name of the show. Do you remember that?
Well-named show.
And one of the sisters has a husband who's horrible, very horrible man. And so all the sisters, not including the wife, the other sisters, all decide they're going to get together and kill the horrible man.
They sound like good sisters, looking out for each other.
Well, sort of naughty sisters who want to do a crime.
Naughty murder sisters.
Yeah.
That's what they should have called it.
It's, kind of a comedy, crime, thriller, hour-long episodes. And it's quite good fun. I would say it's, the series starts showing the husband dead and then flashes back to 6 months earlier, where you see the sisters originally hatch the plan to kill him. So you basically know that they successfully kill him, but you don't know how they do it.
Maybe he killed himself.
Maybe he killed himself, but it's implied that that is not the case.
Because he was a bad sister.
No, he was not a sister.
What?
He's the husband of one of the sisters. And the show keeps going back and forwards between the past, when they're plotting to kill him, and the present day, after he's been killed. And this show, I like this show, but I'm also very frustrated by this show because half the scenes are in the present day, and most of which are focused around two insurance guys trying to look into why this guy was killed and figure out if he was murdered or if it was an accident. And I find the two insurance guys quite boring and unlikable, and all of the scenes with them are just basically them interviewing the sisters, and I just find it dull. I don't like it. And then it will flash back.
Insurance claim simulator.
Yeah, it's like insurance claim simulator. And then it will flash back to the sisters in the past plotting the murder, and that's really good fun and funny and exciting. So half the time I'm having a great time, and then the other half, when it flashes forward to the future, I'm like,
so do you think if we separated these into 2 seasons, maybe the problem...
Well, then one of the seasons would just be shit.
Well, no, it's only bad if, insurance is compared to something as exciting as a murder.
Well, I think maybe
if you watch the insurance claim just in isolation, actually, maybe you'll appreciate it.
No, I would not. I would say this is boring and rubbish and way worse than the previous season where all the fun stuff happened. So yeah, I would say overall, I recommend it. It's not a must watch, but if you're looking for a kind of fun, easy show to watch, it's pretty good. The guy playing the husband is really good and plays just the most unlikable character ever. It's a real masterclass in making someone incredibly unlikable, but not quite to the point of caricature. Laura and I multiple times have been like, oh, that's like this person we know, or that's like this thing that happened. Oh. So he's not kind of just an evil villain in a cartoonish way, but he is so unlikable that you are so immediately on the sister's side when they decide to kill him, and that's really good fun. So yeah, overall would recommend it, but all the flash forwards to the insurance stuff is it's maybe not quite as boring as I've made it sound, but is definitely boring.
People might be into that kind of thing.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is if you've not seen Sharon Horgan's other stuff, I think she's probably got better stuff. I've not seen it all, but Catastrophe is really great, and I would say watch that before you watch Bad Sisters.
Is that a movie?
Catastrophe is a show that was on Channel 4 with Sharon Horgan and Rob Delaney playing a couple who get pregnant by accident, I think. And that was like multiple series, and that was really, really good. But if you liked that and are looking for more hogs, that's what I call Sharon Horgan.
Horde of
She
hogs.
hates it.
Does she?
She hates it when I call her
Yeah,
hogs.
you need to stop that.
Then Bad Sisters is
I would have said a
fairly good fun.
smorgasbord.
You just said a smorgasbord.
Smorgasbord.
When you
I don't
have
know
said
if
that?
she's got lots of things to see. Like a
shor-
smorgasbord. but
Shorgas.
it's a smorgasbord. It's just all her movies on a board.
Right.
Series. You get me?
Yeah, because her name begins with
Shorg.
that sound.
Yes,
The
exactly.
the sh sound.
Exactly.
But you've removed the M because there's no M in her name.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I don't want to repeat of what happened earlier, so I'm going to say that's very clever, Luke.
Smorgasbord.
And well done.
Thank you. This is all I wanted from you. Will you pat
It's good.
me?
It's
Will
good
you
to
pat
know.
me on the shoulder?
I've given you
Will you pat
a
me on the...
mental pat on the shoulder. There
Thank
you. Go.
you. I want a physical one. Thank you.
You've had both now, and aren't you a lucky boy?
I'm ecstatic now.
Should we talk about Companion?
Yeah, let's do it.
But
How? There's so many twists and turns in this movie.
Yeah. So, Companion is a new movie written and directed by a guy called Drew Hancock. And I'm going to give a very vague summary of the movie. There's, as Luke said, quite a lot of twists and turns in the movie, including one quite significant plot reveal that happens about 30 minutes into the film. This is revealed in the trailer.
Like a bunch of fucking idiots.
Which is stupid.
So dumb.
But we're not going to reveal it because I think you're probably better served not knowing it going in. But our non-spoiler section may be a bit shorter than usual because it's hard to talk about without getting into what the film's actually about. But to give you a brief summary, it's a sort of horror comedy thriller kind of thing. It's about a young couple called Iris and Josh who go and visit Josh's friends on holiday at a lake house in America. But all is not quite as it seems.
What?
As is how you could end the plot summary of any thriller movie. It's kind of feels a bit like Get Out.
Yeah, I got Get Out vibes.
It's very hard not to compare it to Get Out, which is a hard comparison because Get Out's obviously very, very good.
But this feels like this is like a lot of horror movies are going for this now, aren't they? Like horror comedy, sort of satire with quite kooky characters and stuff. It's good though. I like it.
Yeah, well, I like that approach in general.
Yeah.
Again, without revealing too much, I'd say it definitely feels in the kind of Black Mirror vein of sort of horror-y, thriller-y type things. Things like M3 Gan, Megan, might fit into that as well. So it's got quite Black Mirror-y vibes. Luke, what did you think of Companion?
It was better than average horror movie, maybe, but not like.
Would you call it a horror movie? I probably wouldn't call it.
I don't know, but it's on that. I don't know. It's on that. The same with Get Out's not necessarily like a horror movie.
I'd say Get Out
Spooky.
is far scarier than Companion.
Yeah,
and trying to be scarier than Companion as well.
Yeah, but Companion's like not. It's a bit fucked up. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, maybe it's light horror if it is horror, but sci-fi. Yeah, Black Mirror is the appropriate thing. I thought it was good. I thought it was all right. I didn't think it was super great. I kind of thought it would have been better served if it was a short series rather than a movie, because there were so many twists and turns, which I thought were all like good in themselves, but could have done with a bit more like flesh out, and it could have been like the end of an episode each time, and I was like, oh, and I think that would have made a slightly more fun time for me, I reckon.
Right.
Give everything a bit more time to breathe. Because it's like pacey. It's like real. And it doesn't feel... I don't think it felt like overly convoluted, but at the same time, I feel like it would have been better if it was richer. Because there's so much happens in it.
Yeah. But I mean, it is also set over quite a short period of time in a single location.
Yeah, but they do a lot of, and this is one of the things that annoyed me about it. I felt like there was quite a bit of exposition going on, or people people literally narrating what they were doing as they were doing it. And I was like, well, if you didn't have to squeeze all this in, in like an hour and a half, then this would have felt much more natural and not like you're all fucking weirdos.
Yeah, it definitely could have done a bit more showing, not telling. And
which is something that jars the fuck out of me in movies.
yes.
I feel like it's a real writer's 101. Even if you're not big into films, it's something that most people instinctively know. It's like, well, that's a weird thing for someone to do in real life.
Yeah.
But they had to do it like 28 times. So it was like...
They had to do what, 28 times?
Fill in backstory
explain
so many times.
stuff, yeah.
So they had to find creative ways of doing that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it just doesn't feel... it felt like it sort of puts a bit of a break on some of the tension and action. Mm-hmm. Which I think if it was a series, you could have that dip and lull.
Yeah.
And then big action, finale, stressful bit, cliffhanger, move on to the next episode.
Yeah.
That was my thoughts. But I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was great either.
Okay.
I thought that the themes in it had been done better in other movies. But it did have a tone that felt fresh for those kind of themes. And I loved the premise. I thought the premise was actually really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would agree. I really like the premise as well, which we won't really get into. When I say the premise, I'm talking about the kind of reveal half an hour in which you find out what the movie is really about. I think it's a good reveal and an original-ish idea. I'd say for the first half of the movie, I was like, this is pretty good. I wasn't loving it. The dialogue is not great. It's not quite funny enough. It's like sort of amusing, but it's not really laugh out loud funny. The characters are a bit boring, a bit kind of like standard archetypes. But it has this interesting premise and moves along quickly and is moderately enjoyable. And then I feel like later on it just goes off the rails. Characters start making stupid decisions. It all moves too quickly. It starts to feel less believable, more silly. Becomes more of a kind of traditional like genre horror action thriller movie. And I was just like getting frustrated by the end. It felt like they could have done a lot with the premise, but there's been too many moments of like characters making stupid decisions. And and I think it also struggled. I think basically most comedy horrors are bad. I guess I am calling it a horror because I want to talk about comedy horrors.
Yeah.
I think most comedy horrors are bad because they try and be funny and scary / exciting, and those two things like butt heads against each other.
What are some you like?
So
because I think horror comedies can be great.
Well, they can be great, but I think most
like I would say something
directors,
like Evil Dead 2. Love it, such a good movie.
Yeah, so
the humor really comes through. Like the humor actually somehow adds to the deranged feel of the film. You really feel like it's just evil spirits being fucking... It's like hell is just full of like prankster demons who are just so sadistic and like just feel like they're having a fun time for no reason.
Exactly. I think a good horror comedy, the horror and the comedy are like in tandem with each other, and a less good one, it's like here's a scary bit and here's a joke, and it doesn't incongruous. They don't fit together as well in my mind. One example I quite like to give, I don't know if people would even really call it a horror comedy, but I think The Host by Bong Joon-ho is a really good movie. It's a sort of monster movie, and it's genuinely scary and genuinely funny. But the funny moments aren't coming from like goofy jokes made during the movie, which can work. Shaun of the Dead works as a horror comedy, and that's got lots of goofy stuff in it. But the characters' reactions and stuff are just funny, and funny things just happen. But it all fits in the world of the movie and doesn't take away from the scariness of it, because it's done more subtly. Whereas this was like, let's write a kind of thriller-ish movie, but then give the characters kind of witty lines to say and
it
whatever.
did.
It feels a bit forced.
I do agree with. Yeah, it did feel a bit forced in places, and could have maybe done with a bit more time in the oven, script wise, maybe.
Yeah, and there's things that happen which, the classic like Bond film thing of like, oh, I've got you here, Mr. Bond. It's like, just kill the guy.
Yeah.
Lots of moments in this where you're just like, oh, just fucking do the thing. Stop explaining the thing to the audience or building up tension, or you wouldn't let her do this. You wouldn't let him do that. Like, that was frustrating. Took me out of the movie a bit. And then I think the other thing to say is like,
also, there's that. Those things are also so glaring when a premise is really good.
Yes.
When you're like, oh, this premise, I can kind of see what this movie could have been, and it doesn't quite match up to that. You're just like, for fuck's... Like, it's almost more jarring than if you're like, this is just a bad B movie, and I'm sitting in to watch... Like, Wolfman, we saw that the other week, and we were like, it wasn't great, but I sort of knew what we were coming into. So it didn't have this overwhelming sense of frustration to it, whereas this at times...
This
had
this
is really close to being great.
Right? Yeah. I think, that's a really good point. And it like sets up the world quite well. It sets up the rules very clearly. It's what we talk about quite often when we're talking about like genre movies, is like, what are the rules of the world, and do we know them, and do we understand how they can be broken? And this actually does do that quite well.
Yeah, it contains it
but,
pretty good, yeah.
That's when it's then annoying when a character like does something stupid. Yeah. Because you're like, oh, okay, well, this could have been really like clever and tightly plotted or whatever, but then it just like takes some stupid leaps, which I don't think it needed to do. It could have figured out.
But I think that's really the trick with like fantasy and sci-fi, isn't it? It's like, okay, you've got this weird thing that's not real, or you add this fantasy or sci-fi element that's, beyond reality, and you just need to make sure the characters react to it in a sophisticated way, and then it feels believable. Whereas you get... Which I thought Game of Thrones did so well for like the first 4 seasons, even though there's like fucking dragons in it or whatever.
Right.
Like it is really, really well written. All the characters feel very real until it goes off the rails. But yeah, the second you violate that thing, it's like it makes the whole thing is sort of like a house of cards. It goes down.
Yeah, I agree.
Down, baby.
The last thing I'll say before spoilers is I think it's clearly trying to work on like a satirical level. It clearly is trying to, or thinks it's making points about relationships, about gender dynamics, about power dynamics in relationships, autonomy in relationships, about technology, things like that. And I think it basically doesn't particularly succeed in saying anything really like original or interesting in that. Like if I think about Get Out, right? Get Out was this amazing idea. It was like, it's scary being a black person in a white space, and we're going to translate that feeling to a horror movie, and you can, see what that's like and understand what that's like, and that was sort of.
And also, you got that whole thing where it elevates that like colonial mindset of being like, we want to be like a black person, but also see ourselves as above them, and that's the whole that kind of is taken to this extreme,
of course,
comical level.
It's making actually kind of interesting points about. Get Out is making interesting points about white people's relationship to black people and black identity and that kind of thing. Whereas this is kind of just like, oh, relationships are hard and men are bad sometimes, and I think there's some point it tries to make about like, oh, don't be defined too much by your relationship, but it doesn't like. There was no point really where I was like, oh, that's a sort of interesting. Yeah, it's not like the twisty premise has made you come away thinking differently about relationships in your life, right?
There was a few bits that hinted it was going to go there as well. I particularly thought like the trope about like sort of controlling relationships was going to become a bit more weighty. And it sort of seemed like it was going to go there, and it really just doesn't.
It kind of just ends up
introduce that. That's like.
Yeah, it kind of just ends up as a sort of generic thriller. The plot takes over, and the satire element feels like it's been lost. It's like someone had an idea for the movie and was like, that would make a good satire, but then forgot that.
Yeah, which is sort of what Black Mirror's strength is, isn't it? Is that it tends not to fall into that trap. Because it's like shorter little things that can sort of leave the story open.
Yes,
open
yeah.
ended.
It doesn't.
But you do
doesn't
come
have
away
to
being like, ooh.
have a whole big hero's journey arc. You can just explore the idea for an hour and then move on.
Yeah.
So I had a decent enough time, but was underwhelmed.
Also,
overall.
should point out, wildly beloved on Rotten Tomatoes.
Is it
94, 91. It's higher than RoboCop.
But the thing is, Rotten Tomatoes is a load of shit.
Is it
because
actually?
Rotten Tomatoes is what percentage of critics liked the movie, and 94% could be 94% of critics giving it 3 stars, because 3 stars counts as liking it. And I think there's a lot of movies these days that are like this, which are kind of, I can't really imagine people hating the movie. It's like relatively well done. It's like somewhat original. So I think most people will give it a positive review.
Mediocre movies get a bit higher than divisive quality movies.
Whereas you might get like a polarizing movie which half the people will hate and half the people will love, and that'll have a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, which looks shit. Whereas you might actually have a much better chance of having
well then these reviews, so that's it. That's like Rotten Tomatoes, you're just aiming for 50 rather than 100. And this has got 90, so
I don't think you're aiming for 50 that it's bad, does it?
Well, like it's mediocre.
I don't think it means it's mediocre.
Paddington 2
it
would be
brilliant,
0.
and that had 100, and I think now it has 99. But I think if what you're looking for in a movie, this is a sort of secret trick I do sometimes. If what you're looking for in a movie is something that has the potential to be really amazing, like not just something that will probably pass the time and be all right. If you're looking for something that will be like, you're hoping will be really, really brilliant, what I quite like to do is go on Letterboxd and see what percentage of the ratings are 5 stars. So not what the average rating is, but like, if only 1% of the rating are 5 stars, there's not many people that love the film. But if 15% of the ratings are 5 stars, that's actually quite high. And quite a lot of people really love the film. And then regardless of what the average rating is, it tells you that it's meaning a lot to someone. Yeah. And I quite like that as a sort of metric. So maybe I'll start my own movie.
Yeah, you should.
You're
website. You're a stats man.
I am a stats man.
You have a degree in stats
something? Maths.
Maths.
I did a bit of stats. I actually got a 3rd in my stats exam.
Did you?
I didn't like it. Should we get into spoilers?
Yes.
The premise of the movie is she's a companion robot for the main guy. She's a sex and relationship robot.
Companion.
She doesn't know
Let's
that.
have some goddamn respect. Thank you very much.
And not only that, but the whole reason she's there and has been brought there is because he has modded her as a robot, so that she'll be aggressive and kill one of the people who's on the holiday, so that they can then take all his money.
It's sort of Ex Machina, but
it's very Ex Machina vibes, which I didn't want to say in the main bit because otherwise it's giving too much away. But
Ex Machina for funny dum-dums.
It's like, what if Ex Machina was like a wacky comedy?
Yeah, which I was very down for. I'm like, I would love to see that. But Ex Machina is also like such a deep dive into that concept that it
Ex Machina does it so well.
Yeah. Whereas it couldn't help compare it the whole way through.
Yeah. It's hard when there's a lot of similar movies that are much better than this.
Yeah.
Luke and I both guessed the twist. We saw this together, and Luke was like, I think I know what's going to happen. And we both guessed that.
Well, no, I didn't actually tell you that she was a robot. You said robot. I thought she was going to be a dragon, but...
Okay, Luke thought she was going to be a dragon. I presumed robot.
No. I didn't have the confidence to tell you that's what I thought. I was way off.
I've got a couple of examples of like things I liked versus things I didn't like.
Go on.
So, like for example, after she does the murder, he like very loosely ties her up in a chair.
Yeah.
Doesn't shut her down, and then says loads of plot details nearby. Yeah. And it's like, this is just so stupid that he would not be at all careful in this like terrifying, incredibly intense scenario. Just giving like, it could have been so easily. I think you so easily could have written a more interesting way that she was able to escape, or they had to wake her up or something. It was just like, oh no, she's gone now, and and I was like, come on.
Because I kind of like the idea that it was like he actually did have some sense of attachment to her. Yeah. And that was what fucked him. Or like led to her escaping, which is kind of broadly what happens, but it doesn't. But I agree with you. It just makes them feel like idiots rather than like, oh, he's got a Achilles heel that he develops feelings for her, and those got in the way of what was potentially smart maneuvers. I do agree, and it's so funny because the guy, what's his name, Quaid.
Josh
Quaid is exactly the same character he is in The Boys.
Right.
And The Boys is a whole thing of being like, oh, you're like a sort of weaponized beta guy where, he uses his he acts all like, oh, I don't want to do anything, but actually does pretty manipulative and like awful stuff. He's 100% the same guy, but portrayed as a villain now. And it's quite jarring because you're like, this feels like an episode of, he has just transported from The Boys. And he's behaving exactly the same.
Well, he's clearly been typecast. He's found his. He's found his.
But I thought he was very good. I think he is a good sort of. I like him as a villain because there is this sort of. I do think he plays that. Again, that sort of. I guess would it be white knighty? Is that what it is? Sort of. He portrays like a good exterior, and he's all like a bit weak and meek and whatever. But actually, he's a fucking manipulative little selfish prick.
He was good at that, but again, it was quite obvious. That he was an asshole early on, and I guess they weren't trying to hide it, but I don't know, again, making the comparison to Get Out, spoilers for Get Out here, but it's such a huge exciting revelation when you realize that his girlfriend has been evil the whole time in Get Out. Like, I remember the sort of gasps in the cinema. And whereas this is like, oh yeah, I guess he's bad and
it plays on that whole dynamic of like her parent. Of course, her parents.
It's not very surprising. Because
of course her parents are weird. 'Cause they're old rural white folk. And then you're like, she's the progressive modern thing. It's like, no. She's evil.
Plot wise, they did some fun things with her being a robot, and I think some of it worked and some of it I was like, oh, fuck off. So an example of one of the things I really liked was it's set up in the movie that she can't lie, and she meets a cop, and the cop is like, what's going on with you? And she realizes that she's going to have to be like, oh, I've killed a guy and I'm on the run and I'm a robot and she's going to be fucked over. So what she does is change her language settings to German so that she can tell the truth, but she's saying it in German and he can't understand it. And that was quite a funny scene and like, I think quite a clever use of the rules in the world that they'd built up. I thought that was good. But then there's equally stuff they do that I just was like, oh, come on. Like, for example, she's trying to get into his car using a voice command and she just like moves some like the pitch and tone dial up on her little I'm a Robot app and somehow manages to perfectly replicate this other guy's voice, which I'm like, I'm fairly sure everyone's voice isn't just the same except for like
3
I'm a bit
dials
higher.
of it,
And it's like, oh, welcome, you're clearly the right person. And so there were things like that. And I think it's just like things like Ex Machina are so careful about everything that they introduce and it felt like it had the potential for really everything to make like loads of logical sense. But I think I think this is what I was sort of saying about the horror comedy thing. I think the fact that it was a comedy meant that they were like, oh, let's just put some kind of goofy things in there. And then it took away from the seriousness of the plot. And this is my final my final example that I think illustrates this is like she is found when the like engineer guys come in later. They're like, oh yeah, she records everything in her eyes, so they would have been fucked anyway. And they speak to the guy, and he's like, did you not read the user agreement? And it's supposed to be this hilarious joke because it's like, ha ha ha, nobody reads the user agreement. But it's ridiculous because surely you'd know that she films everything with her eyes, or you do some research.
It's
about
like
that.
iPhones exist in this world. You would obviously be somewhat, especially if you're planning a murder. You would be like, let's figure out whether
whether there's a huge gaping hole in my plan,
or at least one of them, because it could have also been solved if one of them was like worked for Google or the manufacturer or something. And there was how they had the mod. That's how they knew all the inner working. If they had something like that, and then there was just something one of them didn't know because they weren't senior enough, or something, some flaw like that, it would have made more sense. But yeah, I completely agree with you. Because the whole time I was thinking, I was like, well, these things are going to be like iPhones, aren't they? Of course they are.
They can
Because
record
why wouldn't
yeah.
they be?
And it feels like they just wanted to put in the sort of joke about didn't you do the user agreement?
Someone was bullying
it's
people
like,
in the script writing,
yeah,
and being like, "Use my line."
And it's like, and first of all, not even that funny a line.
No,
but
also done to death.
And it just overused,
things,
and it just undermines the whole thing. Like you suddenly are not invested in the plot if the characters haven't done the work, and in again something like Ex Machina or something like Get Out, every character is 5 steps ahead of the audience, and has covered every last little angle. And this is like, oh yeah, I'll throw that in or make this happen. And I think probably because it thinks it's a comedy, it is like, well, that's not a big deal. But I think it is a big deal because it should still be coherent and smart. It just should be funny as well. Instead.
Yeah, I agree. There's a few. There's also I found the intelligence meter really annoying as well.
Oh, what? That she can turn her intelligence up?
Yeah,
and down.
I mean I don't mind it, but it's always like the way they portray intelligence in so many movies is always so just not how people being smart functions. Do you know what I mean? And like, because I imagine it would be like she would have to always be intelligent as the machine, but is whether she would, present it in that way because it's like a user interface. It's not like whether she actually has the processing capabilities or not. And then this whole thing when they turn it up to maximum and suddenly there's like slow motion and her eyes are like, wow, I see everything. Like I can see the Matrix now. And then all that happens as a consequence of her having the intelligence is describing what her plan is going to be, which is not even that smart. It's just get the car and run away.
Yeah, exactly. I was quite excited.
Well, everyone knew that was the plan.
I was quite excited for her turning her intelligence up to 100, for her to come up with like some genius plan. Yeah. Like it seemed like that was what they were setting up, and I was quite excited in the way that when like you see an amazing heist in a heist movie, you're like, oh, that's so smart. And I actually thought something had happened. I thought what she'd done is she'd like reprogrammed the phone and created like a fake user interface.
Right.
So that he thought he was putting her to sleep, but really she was awake. And no, she didn't really use it at all. It didn't really amount to anything.
Yeah.
So that was, that was annoying.
And also I thought there could have been other modes. Boost up.
Yeah, they could have used more. I think the other thing that I was a bit less keen on, this is true of Bad Sisters as well. Bad Sisters, obviously that I was talking about earlier, you find out that this guy's been killed and you're just trying to find out how they did it. The first thing that happens in this movie is the robot lady says, when your heart is blah, 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 this has happened 2 times in my life, the day I met Josh and the day I killed him. And then you know that the whole movie is leading up to her killing him. And I don't think giving that information does anything apart from it's sort of like a fun moment when she says it. Yeah. But then the whole time I'm just like, okay, when's she going to kill him then?
Yeah, it feels like at the beginning it's like, wow, we're fun and ballsy and where are we going? But you're going to have to justify that with some crazy twists to recontextualize all of it. I actually completely forgot that happened. I remember at the end of the movie when she was like, repeated it at the end. And then I was like, oh yeah, she did say that at the beginning.
See, I remembered,
but that was all it was all it elicited. It was like, oh yeah,
I remembered it, and there's lots of moments in the movie where it's like, oh, how's she going to get out of this? And it's like, oh well, we know she is going to get out of it because she's got to get out of it and kill the guy.
Also, the way she killed him was they'd have that crazy corkscrew. Yeah, which I don't even think that would kill you.
No, you don't think corkscrewing out your brain?
Well, no, but I don't know if it goes in that. It goes in his eye.
It goes through his temple, doesn't it?
Would that kill you? I don't know.
I'm not a brain scientist.
I'm not a brain guy either. Because I feel like there's some
good a lot of bits of your brain that if you pull them out, then you're fucked.
Yeah, I reckon so.
I think the temple's probably. I don't think you have to go far in the temple to be dead.
I don't know. I didn't look it up, but in my head I was just like, I think that's going in his eye, and it would just be like, you fuck. Yeah. Rather than also like, why is it so strong? Like, what are their wine bottles made of? It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it was kind of silly. Yeah, it just kind of becomes a sort of generic action movie at the end.
I also felt like the end scenes just felt like I was reminded of robot movies that were better, because they do the like Terminator 2 hand rip
Yeah.
thing, which looks sick. But I'm also like, oh, I could have been watching Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And then they also do the Ex Machina thing where it's like, now the robot's out
Yeah.
free and no one knows it's a robot. And you're like, oh yeah, I could have been watching Ex Machina.
Yeah. Yeah. So watch Ex Machina, Terminator 2,
Yeah.
Black Mirror, and Get Out. And then when
Blade
you finished
Runner.
all of those...
You go.
No, I don't want
I know you hate Blade Runner. Blade Runner's a good movie.
Boring. Boring. Anything worse than Blade Runner is the sequel to Blade Runner. That's going to get me lots of hate.
I also really like that one. I think it's good. Blade Runner 2049.
2049.
As I have to say it. Blade Runner 2049.
2049.
What else have I got on my list? I did like, you know what twist I did like? I liked the use of there being another robot. I thought that was fun, and that they reprogrammed him to fall in love with him to then use him as a puppet. I thought that was good.
Yeah. I thought
I was like,
it was a fun little extra layer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Lucas Gage, who plays the other robot, was really
Lucas
good.
Gage. I thought he was the best actor in it.
Have you seen White Lotus, Luke?
No.
You should very much watch White Lotus. Lucas Gage is in season 1 of White Lotus.
Anything.
And he's really good.
Is it? Yeah, I liked him the most in this. I thought most of the performances were pretty good, but I thought he was the best robot. There's only 2 robots.
Luke's scrolling through his notes to be like, did I have any other
Did
opinions?
I have any other opinions?
No, that's all of them.
No.
I think
this is a thing I find weird, though, in general. This is more about the concept. Like, why are people trying to build robots like people in the first place? You know, when you give them, like, full human capacity, it seems like a mistake to me, because I'm just like, well, then you just find a person. Like, do you know, like this whole thing where it's like she's sort of becoming self-aware and then starts resisting him and all this sort of stuff, and I'm just like, well, this guy just needs to fucking find a regular girlfriend. Or you have a mindless sex robot. But you don't go, do you know what I mean? You don't give the sex robot,
I would say,
human quality.
Yeah, humans. You can have sex with them, and that's good if you want to do that.
Yeah.
Also, the world's sort of built for humans.
Yeah.
So, like, if you build a robot, you're like, well, I need a robot that can get up the stairs, and I need a robot that can reach a bookshelf, and and then all of a sudden you're getting closer and closer to a human.
I don't need my sex robot to get me books from the shelf.
But why? Why do you want
It's a sex robot to have sex with it.
Yeah, but you're like people in the olden days who were like, well, I'll have a CD player and a telephone and a calculator.
Yes.
No, have a smartphone that does it all.
I hate smartphone.
Okay, Luke
much.
hates smartphone. So Luke doesn't want his robot and his cleaning robot to be the same thing.
I do not.
I think I'd just like one robot
I don't want my robot to suck me off and then use it as a Hoover immediately afterwards. It feels distasteful to me. That'd be quite fun design.
It finished sucking you off, and it's like
it
operation
sucks with its
complete,
mouth.
and then it transforms into like a
No, it just sucks it up with its
robot
mouth.
Hoover.
Yeah, and then all the dust goes into some, I don't know, wherever my seed has also gone, I guess.
Oh.
And then it all gets evacuated. But see, this is the point. Now it does everything, and now it's just a human, because now it's shitting, and that's the thing.
Maybe it might be cheaper than a human, and capitalism. At the end of the day. End of the day, all films are about capitalism.
Well, all right, fine. Checkmate. Well done. You win. How do you feel? If you had a companion bot, would you ever get a companion bot? What would you make it look like?
Because
this was a scene you missed.
Well, I have
you
a
missed
long
this
turn.
scene.
So there was a credits scene, and I needed the loo so bad. I whispered to Luke, "Tell me what happens at the credits scene," and I ran to the loo.
Yeah.
The reveal is that there's loads of bots that all look like the main woman.
No, one bot.
Well,
but
you see another bot.
Yeah.
That looks like her.
Yeah.
I don't think I would.
You'd want a customizable.
I don't
look.
think I'd like the idea of. Okay, first of all, not that into sex bots.
Yes.
Don't think I would get a sex bot.
Scared of them.
Although I do think there is something interesting about how women's sex toys
How
are
nice
celebrated
they look.
and men's sex toys are shamed.
Yeah, I always liked it. I always found it funny that it's like, dildos are sort of really seen as a thing, and if you've got a sex doll, a full doll, they're like, that is so creepy and gross and disgusting.
Or even
But
just even
I
a
find it
fleshlight,
way
people
more
are like, that's great.
Yeah, but I find it way more disconcerting if you have like a severed penis rather than the complete being.
Yeah.
It actually feels more deranged to me to be like, yes, I'm dildoing myself with a severed cock from somewhere. Whereas like, I've got a girlfriend and I like to stroke her hair. They're like, you fucking freak! You're disgusting. Dad's gone mad. Which I would also, I mean, not to be gender stereotyped here, but I would imagine men would be more prone to buying a disembodied genitalia. Whereas it's not, it's women. Men buy the dolls.
Yeah.
They want the companionship, which is an interesting gendered thing for us to ponder, which didn't come up in Companion.
Yeah, I feel like, there could have been a lot more room to explore, like, what men and women want out of relationships. I mean, there's, it's kind of mentioned a bit and slightly played for laughs, this idea that he just wants, like, someone to fuck. And it's quite funny that he's, like, got her intelligence set down low.
Yeah. But even the
that
scene...
that
even
kind
the
of
scene,
says something.
Even the scene where he first gets her and decides to have sex with her doesn't land. Like, the actual timing of it feels like not...
Right.
It sort of felt like what you were saying. It's like script says this must happen now. And it just doesn't feel organic.
Yeah, I feel like it was sort of riffing on stereotypes and things we already know.
Yeah.
Rather than making an interesting point, which movies don't have to do, but it felt like it thought it was. Felt like it thought it was making a kind of...
Yeah, because the obvious one is like
interesting
controlling
satirical
relationships could have been explored really well.
Yeah.
And that would have been pretty good. But it didn't happen. How would you feel if I got a companion bot and it just looked exactly like Laura?
Like my girlfriend.
And every time you asked me, being like, it looks like Laura, I was just like, no, it doesn't. No, Sam. That's so weird.
I think I think you can probably imagine I'd be somewhat uncomfortable with that, as I think Laura would be as well.
What if it was you?
What if you got a sex bot that looked like
it was
me?
You? I made it so similar to you. Would you feel like I was sexually assaulting
See,
you?
I think this is something you would actually do, and I'm worried that this is your sort of subtle way of asking for my permission to make a sex bot out of me.
No, but how would you feel? Would you feel bad? Because I feel like if I came in and someone was having sex with a doll that looked just like me, I would feel like they were having sex with me. And I'd be like, how dare you? I didn't consent to that.
That would actually, you know what? All I'm thinking is like, that's such a horrifying idea and would actually be...
It's very much
horrifying
on the way.
plot to like a sort of disgusting, like erotic thriller movie, or horror movie. Like I think probably... there's things where you can get like porn stars,
like
things that look like porn stars.
Yeah. But this would be like
the idea that you could
full
like
body.
You could like upload a photo of like your next door neighbor and they'd like make a sex bot out of it, and then suddenly you're walking, she's walking down the street, your next door neighbor, and sees you with like a copy of her that you can have sex with.
You could literally be like, what? It's not. I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, that's also probably on the cards pretty soon, technologically speaking.
You know what?
Already,
when all this conversation about like taking people's likeness with AI and deepfakes and stuff, my reaction to most of it has been like, "Oh, who cares? People are just going to make stupid stuff and whatever." But describing that scenario of like
the idea of me using your likeness
like
to be my new boyfriend.
Yeah, I think I could probably deal with you making a fuck version of me.
That's because you like me a lot.
I just think you're sort of innocent enough. I think like,
what if I did something?
I don't think you are gonna like fuck Robot Sam so much that you're gonna be like, this isn't enough. I need to move on to the real thing, and then force me to bed with you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What if
scary old thought?
How would you feel if I like merged you and Laura into one being? So it had like her head, but your body.
I don't know if I'd specifically recognize it being my body. I think I would find it weird that you had a sex bot with my girlfriend's head and a cock. Just my girlfriend's head. The cock is almost irrelevant. Yeah, you know what? I am enjoying all these variations of the same question, but I do think probably the answer to all of them is yeah. I wouldn't be like too chuffed.
Well, how interesting. Well, we've learnt a lot.
Do you think like AI sex robot things are going to be big in the future? Do you think it's going to be like problematically big where people are like not? I mean, people sort of are implying that it's maybe happening a bit in Japan already.
It's going to be like,
but I think it's
going to be like crack porn or something, like even more addiction. I mean, I think there'll be certainly a sub community will be taken over by it. I think quite enamored by it, but I don't know. Maybe it's quite expensive to build a sex robot.
Well, for now,
yeah. I mean, I've never been tempted by a fleshlight, even out of curiosity. But maybe that's because I like a person.
You like a person. You're a good guy. Well, that's why you've got that collection of blow up sex dolls.
Exactly. Yeah, each with their own unique personality that I've downloaded
each with their own unique fleshlight.
Yeah,
sewn into them.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it does open up the thing of like, because I mean, yeah, some people will be into it. Because I mean, it's like when people fall in love with like catfishes and stuff. And all you need is an AI sophisticated enough to ask you the right questions to make you feel cared for. And then you're in love with them. I don't think it's that difficult to do. And then also if it has like a vibrating pussy or something, it's going to be... Oh boy, even better.
Well, see, in my head...
Why would I go and date a woman when I can just...
In my head, the knowledge of knowing it wasn't a real person would mean it would not truly satisfy my desire for companionship. And my hope always would have been that other people would feel similarly.
Yeah, but you're going to have a generation that is raised with that being a possibility.
But even...
AI's taken over therapists.
Not just the... new generation, like seeing how old people will see like an AI photo of like Jesus sitting on a dinosaur, and they'll comment like, "Wow, the miracle of God! This is amazing."
Oh, when I'm an old man,
like,
I'll have a sex companion bot for sure.
People are so clearly fooled by everything that
I won't be fooled as an old man, but I'll probably be like, yeah, come on, give me the sex robot.
Yeah.
Let me go out with the sex bot.
So you're expecting to still be single as an old man?
I imagine so.
Or maybe your wife will let you get a sex robot.
That'd be great. What a kind thing to do. But that would probably be more of a like, I don't think I'd be like, I'm in love with it and it loves me. But I'd probably be like, this is a bit of fun, isn't it? It's an experience to have before I die. But I don't know, I do worry because AI is doing like therapy. Have you seen that? They're using them in Alcoholics Anonymous to be their...
I've seen people like use ChatGPT as a sort of de facto therapist, but I don't know if they're actually
I believe AI is using them as
them.
people's sponsors. You know that they have that thing where it's like if you're off the wagon or you're tempted to go off the wagon, you check in with your sponsor.
Okay, and you can get an AI sponsor.
Yeah.
Probably better than getting a fucking alky. Who are you gonna trust to give you good advice? A robot trained on trillions of hours of human data, or some guy called Gary who's lost 20
anymore.
years of his life because of how much special brew he was drinking?
I mean, it's a compelling argument.
And yes, I know, blah, 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 offended by that, people struggling with alcohol issues. Just don't take anything I say seriously. The joke is I'm stupid. If you're offended, what you're forgetting is the joke is I'm stupid.
Oh God, you're this guy now.
Yeah, I really
been
didn't
on
mean
podcast for less than 10 episodes.
I'm offended. No, obviously be offended at the offensive comedians I don't like, but don't be offended at the comedians I do like,
Rightly
which includes me and my favourite comedian, Luke.
I think that's a great place to end.
I'm going to cut out the bit where I'm like doing Rogan shouting. I'm like, if you're offended. Luckily, this is at the end of the podcast, and the chance of anyone ever hearing it is low.
Yeah, it's interesting. People don't do that much. People do that with books, so they read the beginning and end.
Yeah.
Maybe there's podcast listeners, deranged podcast listeners who watch the first 5 and last minutes of a podcast.
Yeah. Maybe should we end our podcast with as much sort of thought and care as books end? And he remembered his childhood butterfly, which said to him, "Be free, and life will come with surprises and forgiveness."
No, you know what you should have
for
ended?
the rest of your life.
You should have ended on, there were 2 times when I felt the ecstasy of true love and excitement. The day I met
Luke Chilton,
Eley,
and the day I killed him.